Today, I'm going to risk yelling at a bear, an oso to be precise. And here at the dojo, one of the things we do is we go over people's games and give them some critique. The main thing that I'd like oso to take away from this that can be applied for other people wishing to, either whether they want to submit a game or just want to analyze their games themselves, is to be a little bit more diligent about the annotations. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about it. So the opening, first of all, is fine. Beautiful. I think some people call this a bird. I think of it as like a reverse Queen's Indian. It's fine. And Bishop E7 that Oso didn't like, fine. He's going to castle soon, developing his pieces. Nothing wrong with what Black's done. Bishop E2, D6. And here we get our first crime, Bishop B5, that you correctly criticize. Back in the day, we would say you're moving a developed piece twice. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add a question mark. And this is very important for you and other people annotating their games, whether you submit it for me or not. Try to identify the moves that were incorrect, especially incorrect from a human point of view, before you turn on the machine. The machine will tell you all kinds of things, but we just want to say, oh, Bishop B5, incorrect. And let's just say something obvious. One of the reasons you probably felt compelled to play Bishop B5 is the bishop on E2. That's a little bit in the way of everybody, which is why, a lot of people would think about going the other way with G3, Bishop G2, also very playable. In any case, Bishop B5, definitely a mistake. And we're going to see several moves here. It's going to be important for you in your annotations to try to imagine, like, well, what were the mistakes and what were the improvements? And as you noted, definitely castles here. Okay, Knight D7, castles, Queen E1. This is like the typical idea in these kinds of situations. Now, again, with annotations, it's really important to think about the problems at hand. So, for example, White's key problem in the Queen's Indian as well is what do you do with the queenside knight, the knight on B1? A little bit funky, so you're going to have to use creative solutions to fix it. Now, A6, mistake, I think. Mistake. Let's put a question mark next to it. Because the bishop on B5 is completely misplaced. It has no business over there. No business at all. So we're just helping it go back to where it should have been in the first place. So a more interesting move might have been something like C5, trying to claim that the bishop is just out to lunch over there on B5. Now, White went back, and here's a great point here. We should definitely consider taking the knight. Because on E2, it's not just that we're like saving our bishop and we're bishop lovers, but the bishop is in the way of everybody on E2. That was your initial inclination when you played Bishop B5, I'm guessing, right? And so getting rid of the thing would have been really a thought at this point. So Bishop E2, I'll put a question mark next to that one. Well, it's not the end of the world. D5, and Black did give you help, of course, by playing A6. Now D5, let's give it one of these funky move marks. Why? Because he's giving you the square E5 unnecessarily, and that's one of the cool things about the bishop on B2. A lot of times people are focused with the bishop on B2 with the pawn on G7, and that's going to be a feature of this game. But the E5 square is definitely a part of it. So what should Black do? Oh, I should play C5. C5, B5, go after you on the queen side, right? And D6 just preserves our control of E5, plus D5 blocks the bishop, doesn't really develop any pieces. One of the things I see as a teacher is the most common mistake is to give away time. People aren't necessarily giving away material, they're giving away what I think of as the second dimension of the game, time. I don't mean time on the clock, I mean you only get so many moves in a chess game, and one of them Black's about to spend on D5, which is not going to help his other pieces get into the game, namely, let's say, the queen and the rooks. So, and I did a video back in the day. I think it was called The Most Common Chess Mistake and How to Fix It, about time. So d5, d3, consistent with the general setup. And now knight e5. So here we're getting to, I think, a legitimately interesting position that I think we might have kind of sort of transposed into something real. So now we're getting into a position where we've kind of transposed into something that might have been a little bit more standard. And some really interesting questions here. My sense is that this is a move where we want to be precise, and that queen g3 is the right move. Knight e5 feels correct, but the question becomes, what are we going to do in this position, and do we have enough? Let's talk about what's happened. On the surface, it seems like white's opened up the rook on f1 and kicked away a key defender of the king side, with the knight having to go back. But the question is, right here for black, what should black do? And I think a cool move for him here would have been f5. And, you know, you just need to calculate that ef, queen g3, and black is fine. And if white does not take on f6, we've really solved a lot of our problems with f5, gaining space on the king side. And f5, we see in a lot of these structures, is key to allow lateral defense of the king side from a variety of sources, also not just the queen, but say the rook, to defend the black king if we need to, right? Okay, so now high on pot does something that can't be right, queen d8. And I think it's also not just incorrect, but it shows again a lack of sensitivity to time. The fact that, you know, you got only so many moves. I just gave a shout out. My old friend Albert Chow died from Chicago. We played many games, many blitz games, many long games. He was one of the practitioners of the high on pot use. And I don't recommend it. Don't recommend it. We're going to see it doesn't serve black well in this game either. But there is a kind of magic that Albert had in being high on pot that did like translate at least sometimes to beautiful ideas. And I think it'd be hard to do it actually on the computer, because the computer is so distracting, and Albert would really like get into a position, and sometimes, usually it would be thinking too long that would be getting him in trouble when he was high on the weed. In any case, that's just an aside. I kind of want to do a tribute video to Albert at some point soon. Here we go. Queen d8 doesn't make any sense. Bishop h5. I don't like it. Now, one of the cool things about this position, and when I say this position, there's a lot of positions like it, is if you understand as white that your key idea is to prevent f5, then I think the move that would come to mind is bishop g4. Looks weird, right? But the point is to say, hey, what I really need to do is I need to prevent f5, because as long as I can prevent it, then I'm going to be able to build up my attack against the black king. Great game to kind of get a sense of how important that is for a very strong player is Fischer-Miag-Mazur, I can't remember dates. I think it's 61, somewhere around there. So here we go, bishop h5. No sense, I don't get it. Not sure I get that one. Definitely don't get that one. No comprende. No Nintendo. Knight e5, no Nintendo. We got just bishop e5 winning the game. So bishop e6. Now, one of the things that we're seeing here, okay, I see this a lot, is that both of these guys have studied some openings. I can see it. They've studied some openings. And then when we get to this stage of the game, they're just, everything's gone wrong. They're losing time, they're losing material. And yeah, this is where I need, especially when you go over your games, try to identify where the mistakes were. So for example, in all these moves, where were the mistakes? You're writing down the times. I appreciate that. That's good. But you need to identify what the mistakes were and what you think the improvements to those moves were. Okay, knight e5, snip. Of course, bishop e5 is winning, as Oso writes. Rook f1, rook f1, d4, at least good on principle. As you note, though, ed4 looks totally winning. Rook f5, and this is where bad things are going to happen here. Queen e3, snip, snop, and then all of a sudden the knight is not suited. The knight isn't suited to deal with the passed pawn. This happens, and now black's winning. Bishop g4, and again, this is the part of the annotations where you need to slow down and think about what's right and wrong in the position. This is where you will improve, whether you're submitting the game to me or just for yourself or somebody else, right? Doing the annotations right here is important. And so here, like for example, this move, I just look at it and I'm like, well, I don't even know what it's about. I couldn't tell you what high on pot wants here after bishop c6. And instantly winning seems, at least to me, to be bishop f6, right? Seems winning. Okay, so I don't get it. I'm not sure I get this one. Not sure I get this one. I don't really get it. Check here, check, and it's actually over because high on pot can just take your rook. He's not interested. You know, now you write completely blundering my rook in the game, but I don't see what else you're going to do. You know, let's say at this position, it's already gone. It's already gone. And, you know, when the mistake came was earlier. And that would be important for us, for you to look at, you know, in the annotations. So dramatic things happened here at the end. And now we got a question of, are we winning? And actually, it's a very interesting endgame where I guess you are. Bishop d8, c4, and oh, white misses it. Here c4 wins. And a cool, you know, this might not be immediately obvious to people, but the thing about two connected passed pawns and the opposite color position is, if there are no other pawns on the board, it's going to be drawn because black can arrange his king and bishop in a way to prevent the pawns without, like, let's say, us sacking it. Let me just show you that briefly. Let's say snip, snop. You know, no one knows where the king goes. And now, let's put this here, put this here. Actually, let's give him this move. Here, here, here. Now, if you imagine there are no other pawns on the board, then the only way to make progress is to play d5, right? But with the pawns on, we're going to play d5 whenever we're ready and win the bishop, and then our pawn's going to win. And of course, if he tries to go backwards, we can do the same pattern with c5, c6 coming up next. Okay, so this, I'm yelling at you, Oso, but I want to say that one of the things we've seen on this game review show repeatedly is it's hard, and I've seen this as a coach, it's very hard to annotate a game for the first time well, to do the annotations right. And in general, usually my experience is as a coach that the first annotation will just have a couple things in it. So you did well to put the times in and to say a couple things. Great for us to get more insight, if we could, to how you saw different positions, what you thought the dynamics were. And then, of course, is really important, by identifying the mistakes, you can really start saying, like, why, right? Like, you know, it's not just tactical things, but why are things, certain things, mistakes? Okay, so there it is. I'm yelling at the Oso, and I hope to see you back on the Game Review Show. Bye.